is to welcome our new member, Josh Hellerman, and also Gene Soini. Welcome. Gene, welcome back.
Yeah.
Were you on this committee prior?
Oh, I've been on every committee.
Oh, there it
One
is.
time or another.
I believe so. Well, welcome. And, yeah. With that, we're looking at the second item here is a consent to the agenda. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our prior meeting.
I move to approve the minutes for the prior meeting.
I'll second it.
And who's taking notes? We usually have Jennifer here. I feel a little lost without her.
I'm gonna take some, and Chris is gonna be taking some.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Motion was made by Randy, seconded by Gene to approve. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We do have a public hearing at 6:05. I don't know, can we jump to informational? Brad, are you okay with that? We get knocked that out?
Certainly can, yeah. So the CCLD newsletter, quarterly newsletter, there isn't really a whole lot of information on it. Just some license renewal notifications and whatnot. So then the building inspector report, this shows the open permits currently. So the last quarter is always the quietest one. There isn't a whole lot of activity there also.
Okay. I was just curious, I saw they had a crane over at the what used to be Lakedale Link, putting in new HVAC equipment. Is that something that they pulled a permit for?
They did, yeah.
They did. I was curious if that would fall under you or not. Any questions or comments on informational? Do you want to talk about the next meeting here for a few minutes? Let me see if I can find that.
We could decide if we want to change the meeting schedule. That's,
Yeah, I'm just trying to find the page here, sorry, bear with me. Meeting schedule, there we go. So in the past, the planning board has met the first Monday of each month, October through April, and the first and third Monday of each month, May and through September at 6 p.m. History has shown that meeting once a month is typically enough. The staff ended up canceling the second meeting in the month. I personally have no issue with keeping it the way it is, but I'm flexible if someone else has conflicts or anything they'd like to talk about.
I think once a month is enough, and if we need another one, then they'll send out a notice and we can schedule it.
That works for me.
I would ask that the second Monday, or the second, not the first Monday, but the third Monday would be best for me.
Okay.
If everybody could work around that, that'd be great.
Third Monday?
Correct.
Third Monday. And my only, again, I really, it does not matter to me. My only thought is how does that work with, Jennifer usually pipes in right about now and talks about the 90-day, 60-day situation where if they don't have, how that interacts with the council meetings and that sort of thing.
Well, the council is the second and the fourth.
Okay.
It shouldn't matter, because it would be like the second one, then if we're doing it the third, probably.
Okay.
It shouldn't make any difference.
If you're just joining us, I say just sign in and sign out.
And there are more chairs right around the corner here on a stack. I apologize, we don't have more set out already. Okay, so Brad, you're asking for the third Monday. Is that a motion?
I'm not
He
even,
can't,
You can't.
it'll be a motion for me.
Okay, so we have a motion, Gene, to set the planning board meetings for the third Monday of the month at 6 p.m. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Randy. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Well, we got a few things knocked out of the way here. Alrighty, I think we're at 6:05 there, awfully close. We're gonna close our normal planning commission meeting and open up the public hearing. Bear with me and I will give a brief reading. Request for board council action. The public hearing will be held on the proposed rental ordinance that is enclosed. In addition, a copy of the current Stearns County ordinance is attached. The city of Painesville currently falls under the jurisdiction of Stearns County. Stearns County enforces the rental ordinance and any complaints. Stearns County indicated that they have received 3 complaints in the past 2 years, all of which were from the same rental complex. Brad, would you be willing to kind of give a brief history of kind of how we got to tonight? I don't mean to throw you under the bus or put you in the spotlight, but you probably have the best.
Yeah, I've been involved.
Yes.
So, it's been discussed about ever since I've been working for the city, so it comes and goes and comes and goes, and now it's finally gotten some legs, and, I know that I had a good discussion with the council probably 3 years ago, I'm gonna guess.
At least, yeah.
And then, it kinda got tabled again, and now the city council came back with us asking to put something together, including the, density portion of it. That was the biggest drive for this current last push.
And then we've discovered mid-process that,
Yeah, unfortunately, right towards the end here, we discovered that Stearns County has an ordinance that covers almost everything other than the density, so, in a way, if we were to pass this, it would be redundant.
so we do have a couple, letters and things sent in from folks that couldn't be here, but I guess, I would open it up to a public comment. I would ask that if you take turns at the podium and give your name prior to speaking, so I know who we're talking to, and I will open the floor up to the public. It is a public hearing.
Well, thanks to the mask, I'm Pat Flanders. You might be able to tell from the eyeballs, but maybe not too.
There's some other indicators.
Don't put that in the record, please. By the way, welcome back, Gene.
Thank you.
And my wife calls me a mumbler, so if you're having trouble, let me know. As you know, I've lived here all my life, been in real estate business for 44 years. I've been on various boards and committees, and I appreciate committee work. There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that happens. I'm here tonight to express some concerns about this ordinance. In spite of the efforts that have been put into it so far, I'm sure they're all with good intentions. Basically, I'm here in opposition of it. A lot of thoughts as I go through it. Brad, you just helped a little bit by talking about redundancy, because I feel there's a lot of regulations and laws in place already that don't need to be addressed in a rental ordinance if there is to be one. I go to page 2 right off the bat, section 38-4. The owner of a residential dwelling is responsible to cause persons occupying each unit conduct themselves in a manner to ensure that persons occupying the premises and guests are not in violation of the following. Classes are following: noise controls, disorderly conduct, prostitution, sale of controlled substances, alcoholic beverages, sale of weapons and use of weapons. We already have laws in place, but it sounds like the landlord isn't being responsible for this, which is rather absurd. We don't have the right to enter anytime we wish to. Say, is there prostitution or guns being sold here? So I have a real problem right there. The fines and the fees, fines are discussed, the fees aren't. What the fee is, if an inspection is done and there's required repairs, is there another fee for the re-inspection? God dang, fogging, excuse me. There we go. I'm going to skip some of this because I don't want to take too long. What is the term of the license? The fee is to be established. Why isn't it established now? Pre-license inspection must be requested. Mitigation plan has to be done in writing. This all costs a lot of money, and I'm going to jump into talking about building codes for a minute, because building code is generically referred into in this current building codes from 1970. I can tell you, when we sell a house that was built in 1970, building codes weren't the same. As many of you know, they're in flux, they change a lot. So when we sell a house, there are some things that are law. You need to have carbon monoxide detectors. You need to have smoke detectors. Doesn't matter when the house is built. But a house built in 1970 or 1920 doesn't have to conform to all existing building codes. But the way I read this, suddenly a rental property does have to. What that's going to create is, that's going to create a mess. Basically, if this was passed as it is, I can assure you that almost all single-family homes that are currently being rented will have the renters kicked out and houses will be sold. It would be good for our business. So I'm really speaking from the heart in this. I have one rental house. It's easy for me to kick them out and sell. I don't want to. They're great renters. And I do property management for Auburn Window Hoises and 2 other houses. And they're international teachers. Rob grew up here in Painesville. They want to retire here. They live here in the summer and part of the Christmas time. And they called me from India last night and said, if this passes, sell. I tell people when they contact Riley Wright, our office, that there's a lot of people that like to rent a single family home as opposed to an apartment. They got children, and we place about 1 out of every 20 requests. The city council had invited me many times over the years to come in and just discuss generally housing conditions, what's good and what's bad. I've always said we have a shortage of rentals, and I don't know how to deal with it, because it's already pretty challenging to rent out a house and make a proper cash flow. When somebody's renting a house, it's a business. But we have limited income, so that's why we don't have more of it. But with a plan like this, well, there's going to be -3 right there. And I have an idea there's a lot of other people in this room would feel the same way. Is Matt Dickhausen here?
Nobody sent a letter.
Well, okay. I'm going to use him as an example. I sold him a house a few years ago, which he uses as a rental. He had a private home inspection done. They discovered that the furnace had high emissions, so the furnace was replaced before we closed on it. There were other more minor repairs made. Not everything, probably not everything to code, but great improvement. Takes good care of his property. And I think that the private system works pretty well that way. Virtually everyone has inspection done when they buy a home now. A laundry list of fulfilling of the code, and this is where I say I'm not sure what building code means. Maybe, which would be unfair to your inspector, maybe he has to go back and study the codes from 1960 when he looks at a 1960 house and say, I guess it's okay or it's not. If it's 2020, I mean, houses built 5 years ago don't all comply with existing codes because they're always in flux. It would be unwieldy, to say the least. Enforcement. Authority to enter any building at any time by the request of the police department, the fire department, to enforce provisions of the ordinance. I don't know. I'm curious what your attorney is going to, I don't think that a city ordinance allows myself as a landlord or anybody else to just walk in. Right. Moving on. Look, I'm skipping over some of the penalties. You get into details like, I shouldn't say this does. You got to have a sink and a toilet or a shower. How many rental units do we have in Painesville right now that don't have a sink, a toilet, or a shower?
I can think of some tents down too.
Well, that's another comment I would make. This isn't Minneapolis, it's a small town.
Yeah.
Portable fire extinguishers, the insurance companies already do this. Any home I own, my business, insurance companies come in and do regular inspections. And if I don't have a fire extinguisher, they tell me to get one. If it's been too long since it was charged, they tell me to get it charged or get a different one. I don't know why the city or the county, anybody else needs to get involved in this. I will say that smoke alarm in crawl spaces, under decks,
Next to the bathroom.
I've never seen that required. I don't know where that came from. I've never had a building inspector say, you gotta crawl under that crawl space and stick a smoke alarm in there. Carbon monoxide is already state law. Back to redundancy. Why do you need that in yours? State law. Light and ventilation, there are inconsistencies in here. I'm getting ahead of myself on that one. Gotta have a screen in your basement window that opens. A little picky, access to bathroom. Here's another one. Homes that were built 70 to 100 years ago might be rental properties. It's very common to walk through from one bedroom through another one to get to the bathroom. This says you can't do it. So, are you gonna set a date, anything built prior to 2000, you can't rent out because there's issues that a bathroom has to be at least 7 feet wide and 7 feet long. It can't be 7 by 12 or 6 by 12. There's a lot of bathrooms in this town that wouldn't qualify. You can live in one as a homeowner, but you can't rent it out. You've got the SROs, efficiency apartments. There you don't need to allow for a private bathroom. So just call everything an SRO. That's what I call, you have loopholes within the wording of this particular ordinance. Foundations. I go back to 100-year-old homes. You might have granite or stone. They may have had issues, there may have been support walls put in, but does that mean the city's gonna say, you gotta lift that house up and put a whole new foundation under it? It doesn't say you can, it talks about maintenance, and once again, I think we're not living in Minneapolis. Outdoor stairways for upper level shall be maintained unobstructed and free of ice and snow, and then down below it talks about, you got to keep the utilities, you can't shut off the utilities. Any lease I'm familiar with in Painesville, in a single-family home or a over-under, the tenant is responsible for cutting the grass, shoveling the sidewalk, and paying the utilities. But with this ordinance, does it mean if they don't do that, the landlord's supposed to go do it? I don't know what it means, but... And further, many of you are probably not familiar with the triple net lease, which is not common in a small town. But a triple net lease simply means that a tenant agrees to pay X number of dollars a month to rent a property, and the landlord knows what the return is. And in addition, it's not common with houses, it's more common in commercial, but as far as I'm concerned, you could do it with anybody. The tenant then pays the taxes, insurance, and maintenance. There's incentive to take care of the property because they have to pay for the maintenance. And the landlord might give them a very long-term fixed rate lease because they don't have to, taxes always go up, insurance always goes up. That might be the inflation factor for the tenant, but it's the landlord is responsible for these other things, which is how they make it sound. Does that ineffectuate a triple lease? I mean, they're legal. Keeping the apartment clean and sanitary. I'm not sure how you enforce that. Extermination, my answer to that one is ditto. The density thing, do we have a block in Painesville that has above 30% currently rented? I mean, maybe there is, but I would be surprised. Does anybody know?
We did discuss the density issue. I had a conversation with Ron Mergen at one point, and the biggest challenge there is what block. You know, there's some blocks where there's, you know, only 4 or 5 houses. There's other blocks where there's 8 or 10. So it becomes a challenge because of the way I interpreted it is how do you define a block?
Is there a requirement for the city to have a density rule? Because I don't know, okay, I don't think we have a density problem in Payne, so I mean, I would gladly stand corrected, but I'm not aware of any.
I would think our highest density is the apartments above all the city stores. That would be the highest density.
Well, that downtown, you have different zoning, so that's probably not a problem. I'm,
Or their FROs.
yeah, or you take the apartments over in the Dairy Queen, but I'm sure, I guess if you look at the zoning, I assume that's for multi-housing. So, I'm almost done. If this were passed just as it is, you're gonna have a real housing problem right away, because there's gonna be people on the streets. Because people, it's costly. And once again, this isn't about me. I have one house, I can sell it easily. It's just about being reasonable for people that are in the business of renting out homes, and I appreciate that there are some willing to do it. I wish there was way more available. I have to tell people all the time, I can't help you, I can't help you. And this is gonna create, the city's called me in the past, is let's talk about how to make housing friendlier and easier and available and affordable. Well, anybody that keeps these homes, the rents are gonna go up dramatically. Because they're gonna get repairless, they're gonna have to pay fees. Another thought is to really start over, but exempt single-family homes. Possibly 3 units and under. There's kind of an underlying theme with rental properties. When you get to fourplexes, you're getting into apartment houses. I guess I'll stop there. I hope I didn't sound too crabby. Because this isn't about me, it's about just, I read it twice. And I just, it looks like this, I'm scribbling all over. And once again, I appreciate the work that you people do, and I appreciate that you're trying to do something here. But, it's gonna create a lot of issues, not just for landlords, because there'll be a lot less of them, but the people who are not gonna have anywhere to live. Because the landlords are gonna go, how do we do this? We can try to comply, we can raise rents, and then maybe people can afford it, and that was the closest point, was we're providing affordable housing. $675 a month, and I do the property management for them, by the way. And I won't do it if this ordinance is passed. Like, Riley's already told me, why do you deal with the hassle with that? Tenants have issues and we address them. We just did a repair last month on one. The tenant came to me and said, we got 2 issues, and went and looked at them and said, yep, we fixed them. So, there may have been failures with, nothing is perfect. So I'm kind of curious if you could tell us what's motivated something like this, if there have been issues.
Yeah, I had the same question, because you mentioned, I think, at the beginning of the meeting, didn't you say there were 2 complaints in the last 2 years from one place? And then I also heard you guys say that there doesn't seem to be a blocking issue or an overage issue, and I'm wondering why we're sitting here, honestly. And then you mentioned earlier, Brad, that you had just discovered that most of this is all covered by Stearns County, so I guess, I'm sorry, I kind of interrupted Jeff King, by the way, you can hear me, I know you can hear me.
He's got a fine voice.
So that's my comment and question, I mean, that's what I'm hearing.
And I'd be happy to address that, because I had the same exact question, and I, at a prior meeting, it's in the notes, I asked Jennifer Welling basically exactly the same question, what drove it, and was told, and I'm paraphrasing, so this is not a direct quote, but was told that there were times in the past when the city would get phone calls from tenants and did not really know how to address them because there was an unawareness that the Stearns County already had so I would tend to agree with you. So that is my understanding of the history of kind of.
So it seems like there's new information since this got started.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
And is the plan, based on what I'm hearing you guys saying, just kind of,
So you got this is.
Dispensing with this?
Out the window.
I'm going to ask folks to stand at the podium because
Thank you.
it's broadcast. No, I appreciate
Sorry,
your,
no, I understand.
I appreciate your enthusiasm. I would ask you to go up, so because there's also people watching this on YouTube and it's streamed, and so
I will sit down, I would like, if you could address the building code thing. Are you gonna look at codes for when the year the house was built, or expect 2021 codes to apply to existing homes, which would, that could be a killer in a lot of instances? Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. I don't know, Brad, is there a specific question there that you can answer? I don't mean to put you on the spotlight, but as far as and I don't mean to speak for you either, so if you'd like to address it, otherwise I will.
Well, Bill, is this a question and answer type of situation, or is this something we'd address later in the discussion, or how do you want to handle it?
I mean, it's really for public comment, but,
Okay.
I mean, if Brad has an answer, he can certainly.
Yeah.
So I don't know specifically what you're referring to as far as where it says the code. I know there's one place in there, I think it was ceiling height, I think, maybe.
Well, you can just keep going, and maybe I can find a couple, because. Sure.
Another one.
The podium is open to anyone else that would like to speak. Please. And what was the name?
it's Jeff Kane. How you doing? Good. It's been a long time since I've seen you. So anyway, my name's Jeff Kane. I'm here basically because I just have a house down on River Street that I bought about, 10 years ago to help my son and his girlfriend out. And they rent it from me, and since they've added 2 other friends that live there, and I basically rent it to them, and I make just enough money to pay the little mortgage I have and the insurance and the taxes. And I look at this, and when I got it, I was like, holy crap. This is, I'm gonna have to figure out something else to do, because I wouldn't be able to, this is a lot. And then I had the reaction to it where, I mean, this gives one person, in the sole discretion of the building official, can do so many things as written in here. They can go into anybody's home pretty much at any reasonable time, the way it's written. It says reasonable time. Doesn't say 8 to 5, it doesn't say no weekends, it doesn't say we have to give you a phone call first. I saw this and I was like, wow, I hope it wasn't intended, but it comes across as really big government to me and controlling. And that's just my honest reaction to it as a guy who's just trying to help his kids and some friends out. So that's my kind of feeling there. The other, as I mentioned to you before, the first thing I wrote down here was why, what problems have there been? Because for somebody to put the time and energy into a 14, how many pages is it? 17 pages. The Stearns County ordinance is only 14 pages, and it covers all of Stearns County. So I looked at that and I was like, wow, for 2 reports in 2 years, for 1 house or 1 apartment building, I just got to wonder what we're trying to do here. And I saw the section on the, I think, Pat, you mentioned the same thing. I saw the section 38.4. The owner of residential dwelling is responsible to cause persons occupying each dwelling unit to occupy themselves, such and such and such. Man, that's not in the Stearns County ordinance. So those are my comments, and I understand it's not a time for us to really ask you questions, but I'm pleased when I came in today to hear some of the comments from you that there's some recognition already up there that there really isn't that much of an issue here, and hopefully that this can be resolved rather simply. All right? So thanks for giving me a time to talk to you a little bit.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yep.
Podium's open.
So I'm John Colzer, one of the owners of SKS Seamless Gutters. We kind of got into the rental business when an individual, a single mother, came to us and said that, you know, they were going to have to sell the house, being that the current landlord was unable to take care of the place. So we kind of fell into it. My partners and I have had conversations with her. The concerns that she obviously has is, you know, anything that we do, anything that we have maintained, when we had the roof done, we have to bring people into that. So now we're adding additional people coming into her personal space, into her property. And, you know, she just, her take on it is, you know, she would prefer to, if there's a concern, take it up with the county. They can do an inspection. They can notify us of anything we need to take care of. And anybody who knows myself or my partners know that safety is always a concern for us. So we're addressing any of those issues that weren't taken care of in the past and trying to do the right thing. So.
Thank you, John. Podium is okay. You can go next.
Hi, I'm Richard Glenns, and my wife and I own Valhalla Apartments. We have for about 25 years. Have you gotten many complaints from there that you're aware of?
Nope, that I'm aware of.
Okay. You know, we keep the place up. We've dealt with the city of Duluth on rentals and their city ordinance, and it's a nightmare. We get out of there. We don't rent there anymore. We've had a lot of people stay in our apartment over the past 25 years, and a lot of them end up buying homes here in the city, in Painesville. You know, it's like young people need a place to live until they get established, and a lot of them end up staying here and being good citizens and taxpayers. But it's an older building, you know, but we keep it up. Everything, you know, we've replaced roofing, we've replaced boilers, we've replaced carpeting constantly, and maintenance, you know, that just, got a water leak Saturday, that was fixed, and a garage door opener was fixed Monday morning, and there's always something. But you add more to it, and we won't be able to make any money, and it's gotta go to the tenants. They're gonna have to pay the difference. You know, if you want affordable housing, this isn't gonna help. Mr. Flanders covered most of the issues that bothered me. It's just overreach, I think. There's enough layers already of ordinances and safety and laws and rules. That's just my general feeling. I don't know if we need more. So I was kind of wondering what brought this up. And I'm also wondering what the thought was on what you were going to charge. Were you going to charge by unit or by the building for a rental license, or what were your plans? Is this possibly a big moneymaker, maybe? I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but is that what's behind it? I don't know. I'm just curious.
And I don't have that answer.
Yeah, I was just curious what brought it on. You know.
Appreciate the question.
All right. Thank you. That's about all I have.
Thank you, Richard. Please.
So my name's Cody. I have one rental. It's for relatives of mine. Pretty small, but one thing I thought about, and Pat covered most of it, but another issue that more actual citizens of Painesville should be concerned about too is what it could do to property values. Just today, hearing so many landlords that would immediately be selling their rental property, if you get flooded with houses that are under $150,000, what does that do to every other person in this town whose house is valued in that same range? When the market gets flooded, values go down. You could lose 10, 15% of the equity in your house right now by this passing if landlords decide, hey, they can't do this and start selling. Flood the market with low-level houses. All of a sudden you go from having 2, 3, 4 on the market to 20, 30, whatever it might be. Now when you want to resell your house, good luck getting that price you want. You know, it's just something that every other citizen who isn't a landlord or a renter should really think about. So that's kind of all I wanted to bring to your attention, so thank you.
Thank you, Cody.
My name is Tim Rothstein.
I'm sorry, what was it?
Tim Rothstein. I've got rental houses all over here in Minnesota. I do have one in Painesville. It's a property I bought that I'm turning into rental units. I've got one upstairs rental done and rented out. But one thing I wanted to touch on a little bit is everybody that's here in the town is basically an investor in this town in some point or another. If they got one rental unit or 50, they're investing their money in here. And if you're going to pass something like this, you're going to see most of them leave. What better way to kill a community? What better way to cause it to collapse? And, you know, if you don't think I'm right on it, take a look at some of the towns around here that have done it. Wilmer, Painesville. I personally know investors in Wilmer that have, as soon as they put that into effect, they pulled out. They left. Sold the properties. Some of them are sitting there empty, falling down. This is what you're getting. It's much like the Historical Society. What happens when a building is deemed part of a historical society? They got all these rules and regulations and laws they have to follow and put it back to the normal. You can take a look at Litchfield. The buildings are falling over on Main Street because they're all historical buildings. Nobody's spending the money on them. They're standing empty. The values are at zero. Nobody wants them. You can't give them away. What you're doing is much like that. There's not a lot of difference. It's just a little bit different way of doing it. Why do you want to chase your investors out? To me, that doesn't make any sense at all. You want more investors to come in, to fix up houses, to make it nice, to create more affordable living, and create better places. With this, you're just telling them to stay away. If this goes through, the project that I've got going now is probably going to go on hold. I don't know if I'll finish it or not. I'll be honest with you. I'll be looking more at selling and leaving, is what I'll be looking at doing. Because I won't put up with this. I have too many other houses in too many other towns that I don't have to deal with this. And I don't think any other investors are looking at it any different than I am. The next thing, have you talked to the renters? What do the renters want? I got renters that come right out and tell me they don't want nothing to do with this. They're happy with the way things are. When something needs to be fixed, we fix it right away. All you're looking at is one side of it. You're not looking at the renter's side. As far as being able to go in these houses and just walk in whenever you want and do an inspection, that ain't happening. I've just been through this in court. And you cannot do that, period. You have to give a renter X amount of hours notice before you come in, unless it is an emergency or you have a warrant. So some of the stuff in here doesn't make any sense at all. Well, 90% of it doesn't make any sense, but I just wanted to know if you would, have you approached it from the renter's standpoint, and have you looked at it from an investor's standpoint?
I'll comment on the fact that the public hearing is open to renters and landlords. And yeah, I tend to agree with you, so I don't know that I'm maybe the right one to answer the question.
Well, you see my point.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's the quickest way to kill a community, you can do it. You know, you should be looking to improve, not to tear down and dismantle. If you've got one or two complaints over 2 years, it's like you were saying, what are we even doing here? That's nothing. I mean...
I'll answer that we're completing a process. So just to clarify that we're the planning board, and we will not be able to vote yes or no on this ordinance. What we are allowed to do is hear your comments and then make a recommendation to the city council to take action or not take action. That, just to clarify, that is our role as a planning board.
Well, I hope when you make your recommendations, you take into consider the fact that you have outside investors that have come in here and that are doing things. They don't have to stay here. They can leave. And I mean, this, to me, this is just one way of forcing them out. When that happens, like they were saying, you're going to see more houses on the market, you're going to see valuation go down, you're going to see taxes go down, less revenue, and you're going to see houses turn into shitholes is what you're going to see happening, because people ain't going to fix them. And you can look at other towns that have done this. It's all there. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate your comments.
Podium is open.
I'm Riley Flanders. I still don't think I know exactly why this proposal came to be, but I am sure it was with the best of intentions. As I read through this, I thought when I was younger, my dad would tell me just a little bit about something. He was always on every board he could possibly get on, and I'd hear about something, I'd say, well, that sounds like a good idea. He'd say, well, sometimes things are a little bit more complicated, once you get into it. And as I read through this, I thought, this is an example of something getting a lot more complicated. And I see at least 7 different issues with this proposal. One, I think there could be significant cost to landlords. We don't know what the license fee is, but I think that's the least of it. We have private inspections on almost every home that we sell. And oftentimes there are a lot of upgrades that need to be done as a result of those inspections. So I get to see what that costs, and there's everything costs a lot these days, and there's significant cost to sometimes what seems like simple upgrades. So you can look through some of this and think, oh, that'd be a little thing, but oftentimes it ends up being hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. I also see where there could be just a lot of time and hassle for landlords here. So that leads to number 3, which is less affordable rentals in a market with already too much demand. The reason that I know about this is because I probably talk to about 2 to 5 people a week who either call or walk in asking if I know of any available rentals. I don't make any money from helping them, so a lot of times if I know of something, I point them in that direction. If not, I kind of say, sorry, I can't help you. If I'm able to help them, though, I do. Oftentimes those people eventually, like somebody already said, end up buying a home here. So it's just a good way to start a relationship with people. In the winter, I'm a little less busy, and I've had a number of these calls recently. So I made calls to 5 or 6 different people that I know have rental units. I didn't bring this up to any of them, and every single one of them brought it up to me. They said, do you know what's going on or what's proposed? And first I said no, and then I read it and chatted with them about that. Every single one said they'd either would sell their places or would think about selling their places. So that's concerning, where we have this many people. So if I take 2 to 5 who come in or call, my dad probably does the same, and Amy probably does the same. That's a lot of people on a regular basis looking for rentals. And I think that this will significantly decrease the availability. So in that way, too, rents are going to go up, not just because of the cost of the license as well as the upgrades that are required, but because there's going to be less availability, and that's just supply and demand. The possible effect on home values, Cody covered that pretty well. Again, if you have all these people who are potentially either thinking about or will sell their places because of this, you both have less people who are going to be willing to invest in rentals here. It's not a big part of our market. We might have 2 to 5 homes that we sell to people who intend to rent them a year. So it's not a huge thing. But when you look at the overall potential effect, it could be a huge thing if like Cody said, there's kind of a flood of the market on these homes in this particular price range. When I look through it, I think that it's also just way too detailed. I know that's been covered already, so I'll be short about it, but I would say most of the homes that you or council members live in probably would not meet these standards. I think that most new builds would not meet these standards. We see with private inspections of new builds that there are always things there. So, I mean, if we're to that point where a new build can't meet these standards, we got to say, why? why are we so detailed? If it was a one-page thing outlining something like, we need egress windows and smoke detectors and carbon monoxide and things like that, I'd say, okay, maybe that makes sense. This is way too detailed. But I still think even if it was one page, I wouldn't support it because, as was pointed out, the county has regulations on this, as does the state. The state has a rights and responsibilities manual for landlords and tenants. And landlords are required to not to provide it, but to let tenants know that this exists. So anybody who wants to know their rights as a tenant has, I mean, you Google it and you'll find it in a hurry. And there's a section talking about how you can basically make a complaint to repairs that need to be made. So first you notify the landlord. If they don't take action, you notify the city, and then the city can send an inspector. And so if there's issues, there's already a system in place to deal with those. So I think this is just excess. And lastly, I think that it's just really intrusive. It feels like a violation of rights and privacy by the government, both for the landlords and the tenants. You know, as I read it, and I think other people too, it's almost shocking that the access that seems to be granted. So I have the same question most people have: why? And then secondly, if density is the issue, why not address that and scrap the rest of it? Because I think that's about half a page at the very end. So I don't think that is an issue, but if that's what the issue is that people have brought forward, then maybe that should be addressed and we let the rest go. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Podium is open.
All right. I just had a quick question. So, can you guys hear me?
I'm sorry?
No? Can you hear me?
Yeah, what was the name?
So I'm Megan Brick, and I am a new city council member here in Painesville. So I just had a quick question about this ordinance, because this is the first time I'm seeing it. So obviously, I doubt this will make it as far as to me, because it does seem to be redundant, you know, with the Stearns County ordinance. But if it does, obviously I will read and reread it before making up my mind. But I just had a question as far as the concerns about building officials going in whenever. So this, it looks like it says that the building official will inspect when there is a licensing or relicensing during that process, and also when they receive a legitimate complaint from a complainant willing to provide their name and address. So is this something where it would only be the case if there was a complaint from the renter and the renter wanted that to be checked out? Is that what we're looking at? Because if so, it seems like these worries, which are completely understandable, of, you know, someone just coming in whenever, are kind of unfounded. Granted, that's on like page 2, so I don't know.
That's not how it's written.
Okay, so what page are you on, Riley?
Page 1, for purposes of
Yeah.
making such inspections, the building official is hereby authorized to enter, examine,
Okay.
and survey at all reasonable times, all
Right.
buildings and premises, so.
Okay.
It's stated multiple times that.
Yeah, so is this part then on page 2 here, the section 38-2, where it says, obviously, you know, owner occupied dwellings are out, that part is there. Purpose, I see all reasonable times, but then it says here, upon receiving a legitimate complaint on the next page. So does that contradict the earlier, or?
It's all very contradictory, that's
Yeah.
the problem.
Right, that's what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was just my question.
There's more on the bottom of page 4 too.
Okay,
Your last paragraph.
okay, so that was just my question. I didn't know if any of you could answer that, if it was going to be what people are worried about, you know, people just coming in, which, you know, I don't think is legal, but then here it said when there's a complaint. So that was my understanding before seeing this and before hearing from all of you who have read it multiple times, that it was just when there was a rental complaint. So if that's different, I would take that into consideration. Thanks.
Thank you, Megan.
Yep.
Bill, you want to touch on that quick, or?
Well, I mean, the only two reasons, the ordinance is basically a licensing ordinance. And then, so the main purpose of entry would be inspection for the license. And then the only other reason that's provided to enter under the ordinance is if there's a complaint. So those would be the two circumstances. The language is broad, and you know, I realize that you can't get in if the landlord just says no. You can't just barge in. I mean, that's under Minnesota law, you can't do it. You either have to get a warrant or whatever. But the main tools would be, you wouldn't issue the permit if they wouldn't allow you to inspect.
This could allow for an incredible abuse of power by individual people. Not to say that anybody here would do that, that's not what I'm saying, but it gives broad power to individuals in a very broad way.
understand.
Hi, Peter Larson. I've got a rental unit here in town. First of all, I spoke with my tenant about it, and he knew nothing of this meeting, was never informed, so no letters were sent out to the tenants, which they should have been. He would have wanted to come. Same thing as everybody else says, the tenant that I have in my house, to my best of my knowledge, I have no problems with him. He pays his rent, and as far as I can see from the outside, I drive by the unit multiple times a month and just visually look from the outside. I see nothing out of the ordinary. It's my money. I'm gonna watch, my investment. I'm not gonna let somebody destroy it. I've gotten 2 calls from him, as everybody else in here. He had 2 issues. I had bosses come in and fix one of the issues immediately. More importantly, I think when I bought the house as is. I mean, the house was sold to me as is at an auction sale, which I bought it that way, I signed that way, but there was no inspections done on it. The electrical wasn't up to code. There was no house inspection like when Pat sells a house. There's a house inspector that comes in and inspects all these homes. If the house inspectors are doing their jobs and we have these house inspections done, there's no need for this ordinance. Everything has to be up to code, the fire alarms, some carbon monoxide testers, all these things that are listed out in here has to be done for the house inspection to pass. The house I bought had 4 bedrooms, all connecting. One door entered all 4 bedrooms. So you had to walk through 4 bedrooms to get to the 4th bedroom. For the 4th person in the bedroom to go to the bathroom at night, they had to walk through everybody's bedroom to get to the bathroom. It was a Painesville building code. They gave him a building permit to build it. Art Arnold built it. Why was this ever passed? There again, and this was in 2000, 99, 2000. So I would say if we would back up and tighten up these laws that we have, we wouldn't need to go through with this. I went through the house and made a common hallway through the middle of the house, opened up each bedroom has its own doorway. Everything's up to code. Everything's all new and fresh and neat, and the tenant loves it. The tenant was in a 2-bedroom apartment with 2 teenage kids. Now he's got a house of 4 bedrooms or more if he wanted to. So he's happier, and he's as happy as can be. So I agree with everybody here. How many private homes in the city are in worse shape than the landlord homes in this city? There's several private homes that you can drive by, not to list any of them, but you all know who they are. You can drive by these private homes and cars in the driveway, they've been sitting there on blocks, no tires on them, no license plates on them, dogs on chains, using them as a dog house. I mean, let's clean this stuff up. Let's not worry about our rental units. I think our rental units, as everybody is expressing here, is bringing income into the city, not chasing it away. So these are some of the things that I think we need to look at first. Just to touch on, and then the big thing here is not one place in here does it say a fee. What are the fees going to be? We're all here harping and screaming, but nobody knows there's not a fee listed anywhere. How much is it? Is it $100? Is it $1,000? Is it 10 grand? Who knows? How can we vote on something that we don't even know how much it's going to cost us? Or what we're giving to our landlords or passing on to our tenants? Or creating a homeless problem in the city? It hasn't been that long ago, and everybody sitting in this room knows the awning fell right off the drugstore. Where was our inspections on that? We're just lucky there wasn't a bunch of kids playing on there like there is normally kids playing on that corner from the apartment across the street. They could have all been crushed. Instead, the landlord's homes are junk. So, that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Peter. Please.
I'm Joe Voss. I was struck I didn't get a copy of the ordinance before this. I assumed we'd have copies available here. It's my foolish mistake. I guess I should have come fight, but anyway, I'm struck by the comments and the people who have checked in on this, the redundancy of ordinances. Like I said, we already have a ordinance or law countywide that covers this, and I'm not sure who contacts the sheriff or whomever to come on or county building inspector to come in and make those inspections. The other thing that I was struck by was and it's been explained a little bit about the ability to access the property at any time. I think that would be an awful thing. I have only one rental property, and because of work and businesses and other things, those renters, I have a tough time getting there to even see them. They do a good job, but I still want to check it out as a good letter it should be. Pat brought up the issue about what degree of code that you would require the home to be brought up to standards. If it's a low ceiling height, basements were very common to be 7 foot high years ago, and now you can't build them that way. I don't know if that would if that's part of the building code. I mean, everybody that has a 50s to 60s home has got to jack up their house to comply to a 7 foot basement or 8 foot basement. I don't know if anybody even thought about that. One of the things that I find in our community, was very impressed with the builders or just people who want to rehab homes. They've taken homes in this community that are really bad shape, some that I thought should be bulldozed over, and we're able to stick money into it, rebuild them, and make a pretty nice house after. I think that's the normal rather than the exception. The exception is 2 or 3 violations in 2 years' time, and I think that between the landlord and some common sense, that could be worked out. I'm not sure who in the community would have, with the building inspector, I suppose, but to make everyone comply to that, my observation for years has been that all laws and ordinances are passed because maybe 5% of people, whether it's a traffic law or whatever, are abusing it. So they make a law that all the other 95% of the people have to go in and comply with. And that's what we have here if we only have 2 people. My last concern is if that, and I think it was just brought up a little bit here, by if we have this ordinance for rentals, what's the next step to be walking into private homes? Wouldn't you have the same safety concerns if you know that the individual was in that home and you knew that they were keeping it up at all? Does it mean the building inspector can go in there and say, there's no fee or license for that person except paying taxes, but how far do you extend these things? So I guess one of the other things that comment was made, interpretation of the code. I was in the mechanical, plumbing, heating business for 40 years, and I dealt with many inspectors in many communities. And the state plumbing code and the state heating code is the same in every community. But you'd be surprised the interpretation by local inspectors of how they do this. Now, Mr. Nelhop is our inspector now. Whether he does that or not, I don't know. But who's the next building inspector? How is he going to interpret a code that's as ambiguous as this one is? And I know that when I worked at the hospital and the state health inspectors would come in, and there was 2 or 3 inspections every quarter there. And we would go and repair and take care of the issues that they found before the next inspection, and be darned if they wouldn't find about 4 more things every time they came. They were there the last time they were there, but they didn't find them. And all of a sudden they find 4 more. They never had an inspection that they didn't find some problem with it. I'm for inspections. I think safety is necessary, but you can't go back and make a home, I think it's been pointed out, 40, 50, 60 years old, comply by today's standard. There's still wiring out there that uses the old plug with the...
knob and tube?
Can't do a knob and tube. Well, as long as it's safe and so on, you can't make them change it. If you're renting it, of course, that's a different story. It's a health thing, and you have to, if you sell a house, you have to have circuit breakers and all that type of thing. But that's known up front now for any housing sale. So I guess it seems like an overkill for that. I think you can handle it differently if there's a really particular problem. You've got the county ordinance, which covers everything in the county that isn't covered by that. Unless they can show me that, or show us that that isn't being followed well enough and that they need to have their own local ordinance for that. And all the other reasons I've heard tonight, fees and redundancy. So I think that this should be studied very carefully. And I know you're going to have to go and take all these comments into consideration, redo or upgrade your proposed code and so on before you send it on to the council. Maybe by the time you look through that and listen to all the comments and say, there's got to be a better way and a lot simpler way. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. We do have some letters from sent in, and I believe we are required to read, so maybe would anybody be willing to read? Otherwise, I'll read every one of them unless somebody else wants to read some. You guys are going to get sick of my voice. This is addressed to the Painesville City Council members. Mayor and members of the City Council of Painesville, Minnesota, subject to proposed rental ordinance. My name is Kevin Farnham, and I own as Farnham LLC a duplex home at 620 and 622 Augusta Avenue. This duplex was owner occupied with one side of the duplex rented for almost 50 years. 10 years ago, it became a 2-unit rental apartment. The duplex has never appeared like a rental, and we have always maintained the standards that should appear like a single-family dwelling with proper upkeep and maintenance. In reviewing the proposed rental ordinance with the already existing ordinance within Stearns County titled Stearns County Rental Dwelling Units, ordinance number 272, they were found to be in general alignment agreement regarding the dwelling requirements and conditions. Therefore, is there a need for a separate ordinance for the City of Painesville with the already existing Stearns County ordinance? The proposed rental ordinance for the City of Painesville within the City Code of the City of Painesville has 2 key additional requirements that I would like to address. Article number 1 is Article 3, Landlord Responsibility, Section 38-4 and 2. Article 4, Rental Property Licensing. Article 3, Landlord Responsibility. The legal violations listed are not in question. It is the statement, the owner of residential dwelling is responsible to cause persons occupying each dwelling unit to conduct themselves in a manner to ensure that persons occupying the premises or their guests are not in violation of the following violations listed. The landlord can list these things in the lease, but proving that these things are occurring is difficult and may not be possible for a landlord to ascertain. Even visiting the premises frequently, the acts may not be known or determined. So holding the owner responsible for acts that he has not committed is not correct and should not be codified in this ordinance. This holds especially true in light of the rules in place for the eviction of people from the rental units. It is possible that a landlord moves to immediately evict said rental persons who is violating the lease and the law and is denied by courts the ability to evict and is still in violation of this ordinance. The landlord can only act in good faith, but should not be held responsible for the renter's act of violating the law. Second point, rental property licensing. This article within Section 38 of the City Code establishes the need for a rental license. It also then establishes all the additional requirements associated with a regulatory licensing program, such as staff, records inspection program, renewal inspection programs, etc., as long as the ordinance is in effect. This motion saddles the City of Painesville with these expenses unless the license fee can sustain the program. Apparently, a financial review has deemed that is the case. Licensing may be used as a method of gaining compliance with the remainder of the ordinance or possibly even the existing county ordinance, and maybe a method to gain control of the situation in the city of Painesville. However, as a landlord, compliance to existing codes can be achieved through other means of enforcement. This also puts additional burdens on the property owner, particularly when it comes to transfer of properties. In summary, when a rental ordinance already exists within the county, it is not necessary for the city of Painesville to adopt a parallel ordinance. Point 2, the owner of the rental property must not be held responsible for the acts of the tenant. Point 3, a licensing requirement for rental properties will add additional burden to the property owners, and compliance with existing rental property requirements can be achieved through active enforcement actions without the need for a licensing program. Thank you for your time and efforts in trying to maintain the desirability of the city of Painesville. Sincerely, Kevin Farnham. That is one of them. In no particular order here, folks. This is this, I don't think I need to read the email in. From Wayne and Patricia Hanson to the City of Planning Board, proposed rental ordinance amended to the city code. Dear board members, thank you for your written notification of this proposed ordinance. We agree that assuring safe, stable rental housing is a benefit to the renters, neighbors, landlords, and city as a whole. We thank you for your efforts to address rental units that may be unsafe or marginal. Below standard rental properties are unfortunately most often occupied by economically disadvantaged individuals and families whose options are limited. Due to their limited options, they may feel unable to address concerns with their landlord. We agree that both their rights and responsibilities need to be clearly defined, as well as the rights and responsibilities of the landlord. We furnished our renters with a copy of the State of Minnesota Landlord and Tenants Booklet, which addresses that specifically. We have a few comments and concerns related to the language of the proposed ordinance. We will try to address them by numbered sections so that we all have a clear understanding of the specifics. 38-2, buildings special access. Nothing in the language addresses notice to tenants or landlords. This is a particular concern to us, as we have elderly tenants who may be uncomfortable having someone show up at their door demanding to inspect the property. We are old, and we would certainly be cautious and suspicious of someone asking to enter our property to inspect without notice. So we would ask that this section be amended to include a reasonable amount of notice to both the landlord and tenant, since there are always exceptions within reason. In the event of an emergency or at the request of the tenant, notification of both parties might have to be adjusted on a case-by-case basis. 38-4, our Minnesota standard lease we use at our property addresses these particular tenant issues with eviction as the penalty. 38-5, does this mean that the city police or official would help the landlord with their case and cause for eviction? Is there any fee, fine, or consequence for tenants other than actions taken by the landlords? 38-14 and 15, a license application and fee payment is required, but there is no indication to the amount of the fee. While we understand that a fee structure is not usually a part of city ordinance, the amount is still part of our consideration. Our tenants are retired and on a fixed income with little or no annual increase to Social Security. We fear a large license fee would ultimately have to be passed on to each renter if it impacts our expense budget for the property. How will the fees be structured? Will it be by the number or rental unit? Will it be different for single-family homes, duplexes, multifamily dwellings, and large apartment complexes? Recently, there has been conversation about the lack of available and affordable housing in Painesville. Will the fee structure lead to rent increases that will only compound the problem? Our concern is that the fee structure be nominal per unit so that the expense does not impact the renters. 38-41, 60-watt light bulb should be amended to read 60-watt or equivalent CFL and LED lights, provide equivalent lighting with less wattage, and are currently widely used. Article, is that 7? This section is difficult as some of the language seems to be subjective relating to block and determining a block for the purpose of this ordinance. General comments. Again, while we see a need for safe, respectable-looking rental units in Painesville, we question both Article 5, minimum standards. Every standard seems reasonable, but will some of the standards be such that it will eliminate rental units needed by low-income tenants? Does the inspector have latitude to make a reasonable accommodation if it does not affect tenant safety? While we strive to have a exceptionally maintained and safe property, and have been blessed with tenants who have take great pride in the appearance of their home, we understand not every landlord maintains their property to a high standard and have not had our good fortune with tenants. We also feel that tenants should hold some responsibility for the condition of the premises they occupy. While there are landlords who don't maintain their property, equally there are tenants who cause the deterioration of a property. How can this be addressed? So thank you again for attempting to set a good standard for the community while cautiously going forward without causing a difficult situation for those residents who face economic challenges. Wayne and Patricia Hanson. That is number 2. Short one. From Matthew Dickhausen, Planning Commission, proposed rental ordinance meeting. Subject, proposed rental ordinance. I am writing to ask you to seriously consider not approving the proposed City of Painesville rental ordinance. Our local city officials have on numerous occasions publicly spoken about the need for more affordable housing within the city limits. Adding a license fee and increased requirements on landlords does not encourage the development of more or continuation of current affordable housing. Before approving this or any other rental ordinance, I am requesting that this commission clearly define the issue that you are trying to solve and to take into consideration all other avenues outside of more local regulations available to meet those challenges. Sincerely, Matthew Dickhausen. From Rob Hoyseth, this came over Facebook apparently. It has come to my attention that the Painesville City Council will be voting on a rental ordinance soon. I would strongly recommend the council to vote down this proposal. As small-scale landlords in Painesville, my wife and I have rented to police officers, single parents, and elderly people. Over the past years, we have had very few, if any, problems. Now the city would like to impose a 17-page ordinance where a city inspector can enter any of the properties at will and impose fines. However, in this document, we are told the annual price for this inspection. I believe that should have been
Nowhere.
Not told.
Yeah, he says that first, nowhere in this.
I'm sorry?
After that, imposed fines, it says nowhere in this document.
Okay.
You skipped over.
Thank you. To my knowledge, very few small towns have such an ordinance, and I don't understand why we need one now. As teachers living overseas, if the ordinance were to pass, we would be forced to sell our rental homes. It sure seems to me that the city of Painesville needs and should welcome more affordable rentals. To make this process more difficult really serves no purpose. I encourage the mayor and the city council to vote down this ordinance. Thank you. This would be a Kristen. Oh, I was from Kristen. She must have pulled it off Facebook. Second to last here. From Max and Amy Maher, I believe that's, yeah, Maher. Proposed rental ordinance. We are writing to ask you to seriously consider not approving the proposed City of Painesville rental ordinance. As lifelong residents of the Painesville area, we have always been invested in the future viability of our community. One of the greatest needs that we have continually heard coming from the city, chamber, businesses, and school is that we need more affordable housing. A landlord that does not provide sufficient living conditions within their rental property hurts themselves because the tenants will ultimately find an alternative property that is either of higher quality or cheaper rent. This ordinance may provide for homes to be up to certain codes that are not even clearly defined within the ordinance, but that will ultimately come at the cost of the tenant to increase rent prices, which will only exacerbate the serious problem of affordable housing within the city limits. Before approving this or any other rental ordinance, we are requesting that this commission clearly define the issue that you are trying to solve and to take into consideration all other avenues outside of more local regulations available to meet these challenges. Matt and Amy Maher. And last but not least, I believe this is from our newest mayor, Mr. Sean Renke. City of Painesville Planning Board. Dear Chair and members of the Planning Board, I write today regarding the proposed rental ordinance being considered by the board this evening. As I understand, the board has two primary questions that it needs to answer. First, whether an ordinance is desired in light of the Stearns County ordinance, and second, what, if any, changes need to be made to the proposed ordinance. I write to you now to share my thoughts and concerns on the ordinance as I considered it last year, even though I am no longer serving with you on the board. As to the first question, I have not taken the time to review the Stearns County ordinance in depth. I had intended to do so, but have been unable. I spoke with Mr. Melhop briefly last week, who expressed that it would likely be preferable to working solely with the Stearns County ordinance and do a better job of publishing that ordinance and notifying tenants of the existence and protections of the ordinance. I trust his judgment in this matter, and without hearing additional public comment, am inclined to agree that a city-level ordinance would be duplicative. Regarding the later question, I do have some thoughts regarding the substance of the ordinance. Many of these concerns are items I would have taken the time to discuss with Mr. Melhop, but have not done so, as the answer to the first question would make resolving any of these concerns a moot point. Bear with me, folks.
Gets wordy.
A glass of water?
Article 2, Section 38-2, inspection of buildings other than single-family owner-occupied dwellings shall be a condition of the business of leasing or renting such dwelling to others, and the owner, occupant, or other person in charge of such dwelling shall give the building official free access to such dwellings and its premises at all reasonable times for the purpose of inspection, examination, or survey. I suspect that the provision relates to the routine license inspections rather than those requested by the tenant. I see no issue with permitting an inspection at any time when such inspection is requested by the tenant or property owner, but I have concerns about the vagueness surrounding the current draft as it relates to routine or surprise inspections. I do not believe the intent is to permit surprise inspections when neither the tenant nor owner is made aware, and I interpret this language as permitting such inspections. Therefore, I would recommend that it be changed to a more narrowly specify when and how an inspection occurs. Point 2, Article 3, Section 38-12, the language is drafted contemplates action being taken against a landlord on suspicion of certain criminal activity, even if the individuals were acquitted of such charges. When a criminal acquittal is not an absolute indicator of innocence, while a criminal acquittal is not an absolute indicator of innocence, I believe that the board should consider removing the phrase "or were acquitted of criminal charges" from this section. Article 4, Section 38-17. This section allows the building inspector to access a licensed building at any time at the request of the police and fire department to enforce the provision of this ordinance. I believe this provision should be eliminated. Amendment 4 of the United States Constitution grants individuals the right to security in their home free from search absent a warrant. While I trust the integrity of our officials, I believe this provision has the potential for misuse as a means of circumventing the warrant requirement, and I would suggest that it be eliminated. Article 5, Section 38-27, the city, as of December 14th, 2020, has 97 residents that do garbage pickup every other week through West Central Sanitation. It seems somewhat unreasonable that a single-family dwelling would be required to have weekly pickup if there is not an accompanying need. Section 5, 38-24, Would it not make more sense to include a requirement for ventilation in all bathing shower areas rather than a window? From my experience, bathroom windows rarely operate effectively, leading to potential mold growth and other issues. Article 5, Section 3850. How would this affect a 1.5-story home with perfectly usable bedrooms on the second floor, but where the ceiling meets the wall at approximately 4 feet instead of 5, even though the middle and bulk of the room is at 7 or 8 foot ceiling? Article 5, Section 3855C. From my experience, most rental units have exhaust fans that are not connected to outside air, and that it would be difficult to vent such fans. I worry that this would create an unobtainable requirement. Article 6, Section 3858, this provision is a duplicate of an existing city ordinance and should be eliminated. Article 7, in speaking with staff at the city, I believe that this provision would prove to be both unenforceable and a logistic nightmare. I would suggest that it be eliminated and the board instead look for other ways to encourage more owner-occupied single-family homes. For my tenure on the board, I know the board is familiar and sympathetic to investors buying single-family homes for purposes of flipping, thereby driving up the cost of such homes and pricing out families who might otherwise be able to buy a starter home. I agree that such a problem should be investigated and remedied, but I do not believe this provision is the solution to that problem. Last page, folks. My ultimate opinion is that the city should act where there is a problem and those who are most affected by it are unable to protect themselves through other means. For example, if a tenant is essentially forced to live in squalor because they are unable to move to another space or advocate for themselves because of economic conditions, then this ordinance may be beneficial. The vast majority of landlords in Painesville are reputable folks trying to make some extra income and otherwise serve a population in need of housing. I would only support this ordinance if it comes to council. If the regulations were of such reasonableness that those landlords who are currently doing right by their tenants are able to continue to do so without significant expense or burden. As I read the ordinance as it stands, I believe that most of the city's landlords should be able to comply with this ordinance with minimal additional effort. However, if that belief is an error, then I believe that we should consider whether or not this ordinance is a reasonable set of regulations meant to protect tenants, or if it is, as some have described, a form of unnecessary government overreach. Thank you for your consideration of these thoughts. Sincerely, Sean Rinke. I think I got all 5 of them.
Yep.
Oh, sorry about that.
Nice job, Bill.
Thank you. We're trying.
Zoom call? We need to,
Say again?
need to open up those on Zoom.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, we have 2, Kevin Farnham and Amy Maher.
Please.
And Tarek, if you have anything you want to say over Zoom, please key your mic and speak your piece.
I don't have anything to say at this time.
Okay, thank you, Tarek.
For letting me get the letter into you, and thanks for the nice job in reading it, so thank you very much.
That's Kevin Farnham?
Yes.
Thank you. I would like to say, this has gone plenty long, so I will keep this incredibly brief, and I am speaking now as a Painesville citizen, as a resident, as a landlord, not as my official position here. I tend to agree with pretty much everything that was said here this evening. I consider this significant overreach, certainly an impact of private property rights, which have been under direct and indirect deterioration for the last 250 years. So that's my position. I think I perform a vital service to the community by providing affordable housing, and I hope to continue to do that in the future. I also thank everyone who spoke this evening for coming forward. That's my 2 cents.
I got one quick thing to add. I put my house up for rent on just goofing around. I threw a rental sign in the front yard on Thanksgiving afternoon, 2019. By Monday, Tuesday, the following week, I had 22 calls wanting to rent the place. So there's obviously a shortage of homes in Painesville. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
I too want to say something. I also am a landlord owning 3 apartments and rent and retail. And I think the majority, 99.9% of the landlords in this community take great pride in their properties. I know I do, and I don't know of any that don't. So I too think that we probably won't be passing such an ordinance, but it'll be up to the whole council, but 3 of us are here, so listening to all of this.
Thanks for listening. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
If there's no other public comment, we will close that portion of the.
I have some questions. Could you specify what the Stearns County ordinance does not cover in comparison to?
Just the
It doesn't do
density.
licensing. I think most of the required, most of the required things that landlords are supposed to do in terms of the buildings, it doesn't have a licensing provision or an inspection. So there's no licensing, inspection, and no density. I mean, those would be the things that would be in this ordinance that aren't in Stearns County. But I think Stearns County covers most of the requirements for what your building is supposed to look like or include.
So in the event that we had, wow, that's really loud. In the event that we had a large amount of properties bought up by entities outside of our Painesville area, I think that the ordinances that we're looking at were not in relation to penalizing the current landlords that we have. I think that there's a lot of outside entities that own properties in Painesville, and we could see that increase with any economic fallout that may happen. When I lived in St. Cloud, I moved here recently, about 2 years ago. When I lived in St. Cloud, I moved into a neighborhood, and we bought it right before the crash, and we had 6 people that lived on all sides of us. By the time the crash was over, we had 1 homeowner, and the rest all turned into rentals. Many of them were owned not by local community people. They were owned by companies that were in California and Florida and very large entities that did not take care of their properties. And so if we're looking at another crash, that's something that as a community we need to be aware of, something like that could happen. As it's written, this is unfeasible. It's unfeasible, and it's not good for the local landlords. It's clear that there's rights issues with people just walking in and doing inspections whenever they want. That's not okay. It's clear that a lot of it causes an undue burden to our local landlords as well. I feel like there should be a commission to write an ordinance that works both for landlords addressing the economic issues and then also under the rights. And that it should consist of landlords, local landlords, I want to specify, renters and homeowners as well.
To solve what problem?
The problem you stated was companies from out of state buying houses. That happened in St. Cloud. I guess my statement would be that there's a big difference between Painesville and St. Cloud.
You are correct. There is a big difference between St. Cloud and Painesville.
And we're gonna, I guess you were stating you were kind of gonna get a commission or something, you mentioned?
I'm just saying that if the board decided to, if the planning committee decided to look into this further, to cover anything that the county level does not cover, then that's something that we need to do in combination with the landlords and not just us deciding this up here, because democracy only works when we're all working together.
And I would just suggest that there doesn't seem to be much of a problem here. I mean, we haven't not had one tenant write a letter.
Yep, so,
For public comment. I mean, yeah, I guess I mean, you guys got a lot of stuff to do. but
yep, so
That's really, I mean.
I didn't
that's
hear
our
too much either,
Yeah.
and so I asked on Facebook a question. If you have rented in Painesville and have had safety issues such as mold, windows that don't open, bedrooms with without egress, non-working appliances, subpar living conditions, rodents, peeling lead paint, please private message me. I will bring your stories to the city council and include or write out your name. It can be an old story or recent. Please include if you can feel that you can openly talk to your landlord without retribution, raising rent, or being evicted. If you're a local landlord and the ordinance would cause financial hardship, please private message me and I will bring your stories to the council and include or write out your name. Please include what your idea would be to alleviate the financial hardship this ordinance would cause. So private messages were collected, names were omitted for fear of retribution on themselves or their family members. So number one, the background is as a relatively young person with limited options, no credit, and no cosigner. This account covers several years with multiple Painesville landlords. And I'm going to specify, it doesn't mean it was a local Painesville landlord, it's just landlords in general. And at the end of her message, it said, it may be in the past, but without this, it may be a problem in the future. Number one, we stayed at the only place that worked with a low credit store and didn't require years of employment in the state. 5 of us stayed in a 1-bedroom apartment where we found the roof had a hole. We couldn't transfer to a different apartment for a month, and the fix, quote unquote, was a tarp. Another person also rented the lower level, and every time it rained, her stairs and entryway flooded since there's no drainage or way to stop the rain. Since I see no doors blocking the rain, I assume that people currently living there have the same issue. The next apartment we had, the kitchen plumbing went out constantly, and the egress windows in the basement apartment were eventually nailed shut with a sturdy plastic cover. We eventually found a home that was promised to be rent-to-own, which was wonderful until it was sold out from under us and we were forced out. Another apartment had drafty windows and doors, gates big enough for snow to blow in, and a broken water heater that was refused to be replaced despite it being winter. Faucets had to be constantly on to not freeze pipes, and we had to heat water on the stove for baths. Another rental went to hell quick with black mold, multiple holes in the floor, no insulation, washer kept leaking, and the kitchen was an electrical disaster waiting to happen. We did have an inspector come out, and he condemned the place, but for reasons unknown, nothing was ever done. Because of the lack of pet-friendly places, credit not good enough for a decent mortgage loan, making too much to qualify for low income, but not enough to afford regular apartments. I rented a downtown apartment that had carpet soaked with dog pee, and since it leaked to the concrete underneath, extracting the smell was impossible. Thankfully, after 4 years of subpar living, I was finally able to find a decent landlord, and I'm still here. I can now say I love living here and will stand up for those living in shitty conditions and educate friends with landlords who want to screw them over about their rights as renters. Second person. Basically, the house is a heap, mold in the basement, rigged plumbing. The biggest factor is they have a mix of water from a well and city water. The well needs to be filled and go to city water. It's contaminated over there. Toilet is in a closet and a rickety shower in the basement. Number 3, this is from Yara Arlette, and she said that I could use her name. Coming from a low-income household, at some point we all cared for a house or apartment without broken pipes, water, heater, and windows. When we were offered a mobile home for rent, we got a You Fix It challenge, so we settled. I just believe all these new costs would make landlords hesitant to rent to us. They are asking for 2 months rent plus deposit for people with not so good credit, all because they are being asked to pay for all this extra stuff. Yes, a nice place to live is a plus, but some families just need basics. I lost my home. I can't say that. Okay. I lost my home and haven't found a place to live in Painesville since. This pandemic has been harsh on my family of 7. We own a small company. No new rentals due to us losing our homes. Please just pass this along. As long as our home is livable, the tenants should also be held accountable to prevent extra costs to our landlords. Number 3, or third person. I can't remember now who the landlords were, the LLC thing I had to pay. However, I had so many problems when my kids were little. My one son had skin conditions in reaction to them leaving walls undone and sheetrock dust everywhere. Both my son and I developed asthma while living there, tons of mold and other problems. I tried looking for help and complaining, but it would cause more problems with the landlords. After 2.5 years, I couldn't do it anymore and we moved. I gave my notice months in advance, and at that time, while staying there, they ripped up the whole kitchen floor, took down a whole wall of cupboard that had water draining behind them from upstairs from piping that they had fixed that made mold. They also ripped up carpet in an upstairs bathroom out, all while I was there with an infant and a toddler. I also had to pay $600 a month in baseboard heating that was constantly too hot and couldn't be turned down. Wires from electricity done themselves was also left wide open. So could have been shocked, and there were carpenter ants that were a centimeter big. They were always all over the bricks that were inside the kitchen. It was a nightmare. They would never fix anything and threatened kicking me out more than once when I complained. A family member also has similar issues, this would be in a different home, with mold and water in a rental home, that she was SCROV, kept complaining for all the problems and shady people that are in Painesville. These ordinances are important for everyone that doesn't have a voice and risks being kicked out of their homes if they say something. Fourth person. It was a 1.5 bath, 1 sink, not working the entire year I lived there. This is a large 2-bedroom with one working window in the whole unit. Mice problems galore in the ceiling, actually. Brought to landlord's attention more than once. Was never done, never corrected. New owner took over property and still never got fixed. Brought the rodent problem to their attention, and he told me to go get expanding foam insulation and fill any holes or cracks I could see. I ended up leaving because I found a mouse in my kid's bed. Please leave anonymous. I think inspections would be great. It's affordable, but it's a slum. I wish there would be more affordable housing here. The new apartments are $1,300 for a 3-bedroom and not income-based. I can't afford that price tag as a single mother. Fifth person. Moved in, carpets weren't cleaned. He cleaned it himself and then moved in. 6. This is Matt Larson. He said I could use his name. If the city, if the city is concerned about unlivable conditions, could they just make an ordinance after 1 or 2 complaints against a certain landlord? Then they would have to go through the inspection process for X amount of years. That way, the good landlords wouldn't be having to pay for an inspection on a perfectly good property because of a few bad landlords. And then he provided a link. Don't these rules already govern renter rights without adding undue cost to landlords and in turn causing landlords to raise rent to cover extra costs of inspections? And 7, Rob Hoyseth sent a letter, and you already read that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so Rob Hoyseth sent a letter somewhere, I don't have access to it, it was sent to me. So I just compiled that from a bunch of different messages that I received from people. I'm not saying that it's any of the landlords that are here. I'm sure that it's probably landlords that don't live in this area that are the problem. And I really appreciate you all coming here and voicing the concerns that you have. It's clear that if this needs to go on to city council, that there's a lot of stuff that would need to be done to it. And so we have to weigh that upon the safety of the people, not necessarily the safety of the renters, and then the rights of the landlords, and making sure that they don't have undue expense to make sure that safety is ensured.
And, my only, and I thank you for bringing that to our attention, my only thought as I listen to that is it's just unfortunate that the Stearns County ordinance wasn't known about, because every one of those comments that you read, if as I was kind of trying to track them, it is covered in the Stearns County rental ordinance and could have been taken care of without their struggle. So it's unfortunate that there was the unawareness that it's already there, and it's already there, and we're already paying for it through our tax dollars that could have been taken care of, so hopefully we can get that word out better.
There's a solution right there, develop a city hotline that a tenant can call the city, and the city can get with the landlord, and they both can go and inspect the problem themselves, and if it is a mold and everything that you just read, which nobody should have to live through, make the landlord, make them accountable for it.
Well, and I would say that
Here aren't having them problems.
the Stearns County, I have read the Stearns County ordinance, and it's, I don't think there was a single thing that she mentioned that it wouldn't already have been taken care of, so, I think it comes down to that thought of, and I think, if Jennifer had known about that, and I honestly don't remember the year, but it's been in place for like 18 years. It was like early 2000, so it's unfortunate that that's where we're at, so.
And no ordinance, no matter how we can prevent bad people from doing bad things.
Right.
And there are bad landlords, there are bad doctors, there are bad policemen, there are bad everybody,
I'm going to give one more opportunity as a public forum here for someone to speak. Otherwise, I'm going to ask that, or council members, if there's more input. Otherwise, we would close the public hearing.
I have another question. If there was a commission to explore a way to work with the ordinance that would cover any gaps that are between the ordinance and the Stearns County, is there a landlord here that would be willing to help with that?
I might, but I don't think we need to look for more gaps. I would show up saying, let's quit being let's quit trying to turn over stones to find one more thing where we can pass a new rule. We don't need the ordinance, but if you want to hear that voice, I'll come.
Okay, thank you.
Things you talked about and what you just read there,
Yes, sir.
you said you didn't even know where they were from.
No, I have the names. They requested that I
You said they
not,
weren't from this area.
that I'm not from this area?
No, the landlords.
Landlords.
Oh, I don't know where the landlords are from.
Yeah, they weren't
I would
from-
hope that there's not any landlords that are sitting
Yeah,
here
they
right
weren't
now.
from the Painesville area, and you didn't really know where they were from, so the comment that Stearns County's commissions, their laws are gonna apply, you don't, I mean,
The
this is.
houses are here,
Yeah,
but not the landlords, so
Yeah.
that they would apply, yeah.
okay, so the houses are here.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that,
Yeah.
I didn't catch that part of it.
Yep. And we need to be cognizant of, if we did pass this forward as it is, it's not feasible the way it
Put
is.
people on the streets,
So-
that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The mass exodus, single-family homes is not being rented.
Okay. Is there any other people that would like to speak at the
One
podium?
thing, hey, Bill, would I be out of line if I spoke since I'm the third member here?
And
If you what?
Would I be out of line if I spoke since I'm the third council member here?
I spoke, and I'm on the committee. I don't feel like.
Gene,
No, it's okay.
I'm okay?
It's,
I just want to find out when I'm on the
stuff.
it's an open meeting, sorry.
So I'm just gonna be here as a resident, but I'm also on the city council.
Would you stand at the podium?
Oh, yeah, I will.
Thank you, sir.
there are four nurses.
Hello, my name is Paul Thielen, and I was just appointed to the city council last week. And I came here just to listen tonight. And I want to tell you that I heard what everyone said, and it's going to be taken under very strong consideration of what the whole group census is. So you've been heard, and it's not going to go to waste. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Any other discussion before we close the public hearing? We are closing the public hearing. Thank you, folks. Okay.
How you doing, man?
Now, my understanding, and Gene, you have, when you heard Mr. Payne, what's that? I heard it, we are going to be looking for a motion to approve this, to go over the council.
or deny it. That would be right.
I would make a motion to deny this rental ordinance as written
Well, and that's-
and recommend such to the city council based on the information we've heard this evening.
One company that wants to do inspections, or just a whole page?
Well, no, because it says.
I'll second
So
it.
I think it would be.
Just so we can vote.
Because he's official, but I don't think.
Motion made by me, seconded by Gene. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Nay.
All those opposed?
In response.
Nay.
Nay. One nay.
You know, because he's like, hey, got 17 licenses.
Okay, now I need to figure out where we're at again, sorry folks.
Well, we took care of the rental, the only thing we have left is officers.
Election of officers, on page 4.
I can't even find page 4.
Yeah, I tore mine off too, don't feel bad.
I might find it again.
There it is. Request for board council action. Election of officers. We were unfortunate that we lost Carly as the chairperson. So we have a nomination for chairperson, vice chairperson, and secretary. Current officers, the chair is vacant. I am the vice chair, and the secretary has, as far as I know, consistently been Jennifer.
Or the city administrator.
You're right, or the city administrator. You are correct. Yeah, thank you.
Whoever he directs, yeah.
Thank you for that correction. According to the city ordinance, the board members shall serve staggered terms. I get that, but I don't know where the stops are, sorry.
Jennifer has that.
Okay.
So if you want to know when your term is up, but basically you can stay on as long as you want. They don't
Yeah,
kick you off.
that's kind of been my experience.
Yeah, maybe you will, yeah.
So that's kind of where it's at. We'd be looking for a motion for a chairperson, also a vice chairperson, and also a secretary. And I believe each one of those will require a specific vote, the way it's written here.
Well, no, we can do it all together. We can do the whole slate.
Okay, fair enough.
Yep. Do you want to become chair?
I'm fine with that, if you feel that I would be.
You're fine with it? Yep, you did a good job tonight, Bill. And I'll be the vice chair if you want.
Fair enough. Thank you, Gene. I'm okay with that. And secretary?
We'll do it as Tarek.
I like Tarek. We'll just
Yeah.
allow him in.
We'll just tell Tarek, he said, we did that at EDAP this morning too.
So,
Hang on, say again, Dirk?
there you go. We have a motion made by me, I guess. Motion made by me that I would be the chairperson, that Gene would be the vice chair, and the city administrator, Early Tarek, would be secretary. Do we have a second?
I second.
Thank you, Randy seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we're almost done here, folks.
We are done.
We are done. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Your first meeting was long, Josh.
Yeah,
Thank you, Tarek, have a good night.
Everybody wanted to.
nice to meet you. So, can I ask, do you live in town?
Yeah, I live in town here, yeah.
Where do you work?
I do construction down here.
Oh, nice. Well, I own the shop here right across the road tracks.